thanks for everyone who's watching. You're either watching this on YouTube or maybe you're here via LinkedIn. But thank you so much for joining us. We're about to have an hour-long conversation between myself and Kyle Hudson, who is one of the co-founders over at Stacklist. And this is part of a video series that has been a little stop and go for myself, but really it's about me talking and finding out from other people what they're working on, what they're building, how they think about what they're building. And I feel very fortunate in that Kyle said yes to come and talk to me on this first episode that we're doing on this theme. He and I worked together once upon a time at an agency in New York City called Fjord. I joined right after the Accenture acquisition, but we had some really fun times working on projects there. And every conversation that I have with Kyle, he's full of energy. And I thought this would be a really good opportunity to bring him in, be part of this public conversation so he can clue us in terms of what's going on over at Stacklist. So thanks, Kyle.
Awesome. Thank you. I think
Yeah.
you want to add us to the stage?
Am I not? Oh, yeah, there you go. Yep, I will take off the background. There you go. And now everyone
Hello.
should be
Hello.
able to see us.
Hello.
So we have faces, not just the title card. Um, So, Kyle, I gave just the scantest of intros as it pertains to you, but fill in some of the gaps. Like, what did I miss?
Yeah, I think I appreciate it. Yeah, I really enjoyed our time, especially at Fjord, and that was for me a really pivotal period in diving in deep into user experience, customer experience, and sort of and thinking almost from the outside in. I think too many companies, and we even saw this in companies that we worked with there, that you ask about projects or initiatives, and it's always kind of company self team focused, and it's never
Hmm.
for a hotel brand, it's never like we're totally obsessed about the moment a guest sets their bags down and then
Hmm.
says what next. It's more
Yeah.
sort of like, well, my team got this budget and we think we're going to go towards this thing, and whatever. And so that was one of those. I really loved that period at our time at Fjord of reframing how I saw stuff, and almost turning it on its head. Abram, who worked with us, was also great at that, where
He
a customer
was.
would come in and say, I need a mobile app. And he would say, you don't need a mobile app.
Hmm.
Almost just like, wait, stop. Let's kind of
Yep.
look at this through fresh eyes. And so I brought a lot of that into, or tried to bring a lot into that into Stacklist, which is rather than how things are built today and what things are built for with
Sure.
the infrastructure we have in place today.
Yeah.
Instead of that, like, if I just had my way and everything that I do and curate in my life, whether it be books or products or services or people I know or places I've been or places I want to go, are just infinitely and easily accessible, that I could really quickly just grab those and share those with you, regardless of how things are supposed to be and how things are built today. And so that's kind of, the evolution of how I think kind of got to this place, and how we've approached kind of solving this problem with Stacklist.
Yeah. That's a really interesting point. I often talk about the beginning of my own experience as a facilitator, starting with Fjord. And I think, Kyle, you're right. One of the things is really around that reframe, right? And it's more about pushing the edges and getting out of our comfort zone, I think is so very helpful. So you and I are no longer in New York City. We no longer work for Fjord. We've moved on to many other things since. However, we're in two different geographies. You're in Atlanta, is that right?
I'm based in Atlanta, in San
Yep.
Francisco right now,
Oh, I didn't know
and
that.
yeah. Let's wait. Let's see. Look.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Look out the window. Oh, I've got too much bokeh on,
Too
but
much bokeh, but
yeah.
Nice.
But yeah, it's nice to be here too, in and around kind of the birthplace of a lot of these things. But yeah, based in Atlanta, and the team is really global. It's one of those that I think whenever an investor or a partner sort of says, where's the office and where are you located? I was like,
Yeah.
well, I'm in Atlanta, but our
Right.
team is in Mexico, Honduras, Croatia, Serbia, Paris, Germany, Mumbai, and the Philippines.
Got it. Yeah.
That's, you
Just a
know.
few places. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
I didn't realize that this week you were actually in the Bay Area, and I'm up in Marin, so I say San Francisco as well, but I really mean Marin County, so that's a little bit different. Well, let's jump into, you gave us some of the geographical components, but let's talk about Stacklist.
Yep.
So, in your own words, and maybe this is different than what's written on your homepage, maybe it's kind of the same. Um, what is what is Stacklist? Like, kind of break it down for us for folks who may not know what it is.
Yeah. At the core problem that I started to solve about 2 years ago is I really realized that starting with me as a person, but then we've
Hmm.
also expanded into what that means for a business. When I think about what content's not the right word, but when I think about
Mm,
things in my life, like I said, whether it's like my favorite Atlanta restaurants, or whether it's the books I'm currently reading, or the books that I would
sure,
recommend to you if you asked, or
sure.
I have a list of movies that I love watching when I need that sort of entrepreneurial juice, which is like the
Mm,
BlackBerry movie and the WeWork
mm,
movie and the Uber movie. But like, I take those things and I group them to be able to share with other people. So it's
yeah,
me curating my life, but then being able to also share that out. But even that, as you think about it, is difficult right now. We kind of patch through it with like Mac Notes and Notion, or maybe
yeah.
I make a Google. Some people will be like, oh, I have a very detailed Google spreadsheet with all of my
Mm,
restaurants, which is very utility, but it's also, would you send your aunt a Notion database of
Right, right,
you know, uh, eh,
right,
none of this stuff was built for that. It was built
right,
for utility, just to put things in so that you didn't forget them. But it's not
right.
also connected then. And so what Stacklist does, it is the place that you can put everything. So I've got like
Yeah,
3,000 things in my Stacklist account. And if you ask me for my Atlanta restaurants, or like I said, coffee and co-working places that are the best in New York, I could grab those in a second and send those to you. So
yeah,
now that becomes shareable, but I also have a social profile, kind of like an Instagram or a Facebook, but
sure,
it's not just me posting, being like, had a great coffee today. This one has cinnamon in it, or whatever. That is like a little snippet of video that becomes old in about 6 seconds.
sure.
It's actually the useful things that I can share that end up compounding. So my
Yeah,
social profile, it's kind of like the front door for me. Um, and then when you pivot that to businesses, the businesses have the same problem these days. Is a website is an expensive brochure that
true.
typically people pay a lot of money for. They don't update on a regular basis. And once you read it once or twice, I don't really obsess about going to company websites and seeing what they're up to. So the
Yeah,
only other alternative is maybe LinkedIn or Instagram. But there's all of the content around a brand or a company is sort of distributed in a million places, and it's sort of up to the consumer to
yeah,
find all that stuff and connect those dots, but it's also up to the business to try and do attribution and data on all that to figure out. So now I think the cost per acquisition for a single customer is like up $25,
yeah,
because you also have to try and stitch that stuff together, versus having a branded hub that literally is the kind of mall directory treasure
yeah.
map,
Yep.
for both AI and humans, to be able to be like, oh, here's everything about a company, and I can sort of save stuff, follow stuff, share
Yeah,
stuff, like, and browse through it. And so that's what the kind of evolution is, and really what we're pushing towards is an open content network.
yeah. I can't remember if you said this in one of our conversations or if I read it somewhere in getting ready for our conversation today. Is it true that one of the inspiration points for starting Stacklist was that you couldn't remember an Italian opera?
Yeah. Yeah. So I went in with my wife in 2017, 2015, but we went to Venice, one of my favorite places, and we went to this Italian opera, and it was a private. It was only like 50 people there,
Mm,
and it was in an old Doge's palace. So it was in
mm,
this like the palace had been there for since the 1500s or whatever, and it was
hmm
beautiful. And what you would do is you would sit, and then you would like move from room to room during the acts. And it was a
mm,
great experience. But what was funny is to get back to New York, and I would sort of tell that story when people go, "Oh, tell me about Venice," or whatever.
right.
And I would tell that story, and they were like, "That's can you send if you could send that to me? I've never been to Venice. I want to go see
Sure,
that thing."
sure.
And then you're sort of like, okay, Gmail history. Was it Groupon? Was it Viator? Did I get it through the hotel? Like
Yeah,
that thing in the sort of digital record sphere
yeah,
was not only not in my mind, it also I couldn't find it for the life of me. I couldn't
yeah,
find where I sort of had sourced that thing or
yeah,
so then I had no way to share that experience with anybody else. And that seemed weird to me that
yeah.
and so that sort of was the beginning of pulling on that thread. And then on top of that, I also was on a date with my wife a little while later, and we were talking about the fact that when we lived in New York, people would say, "Hey, um, I'm headed to New York. Can you send me some places to go?" And all of a
Sure.
sudden, my mind flashes to this like Google map. If you look at my Google Maps, there's like 900 gold stars all over the island,
Yep,
and it's
yep,
and it's just a crude way to be able to try and remember or not forget stuff. But
yeah.
that is also not the shareable sort of. I just wanted to be able to be like, yeah, here's a stack of things, and I just
That's
hand it
right.
to you. And
Yeah,
so that was kind of the genesis.
nice. So you're in year two of working on Stacklist, building it, and you've made an incredible amount of progress in lots of different ways, and we'll get into the specific ways in just a minute. But can you talk a little bit about what was hardest for you in year one? Like looking back on it, it's now in your rear view. What was hardest about year one?
Um, building something, I've always been able to see sort of into the future, not like in a magic way,
Oh, I
but
was
I've
gonna say,
always
like, can you talk to me about lottery tickets
Nostradamus.
or?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Let me tell you who wins the World Series this year. No,
That's right.
it's more like I think my mind has always just been attuned to seeing something and immediately hopping 10 or 15 steps down the line and seeing where
Mm,
it's going to end up
all right.
and then watching as things progress and how those, how the ball ends up following the path that I
Yeah.
sort of saw or whether it sort of goes in a different direction. But problem is I've never really acted on most of that stuff. I did in a company that I worked for before Stacklist that um, before ChatGPT came out really pushed to be like, we need a lab, essentially kind of a laboratory to start building stuff, and especially if
Mm,
AI is going to be big, and of course it did, but like in the first year when we were building Stacklist, when you're building something that is this sort of you're going towards an open content network, right? Where
yeah.
where I think and open is the key because it's one of those that Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. I mean, most of these are sort of siloed ecosystems that thrive off of ad data, and
Sure.
they're not supposed to be out and be distributed. They're supposed to be sort of gated. And what I envisioned was this bigger sort of curated layer of the internet. But when you start building the very beginnings of it, Stacklist looks like a simple bookmark manager. And
Mm,
to convince people to use it, you can't be talking about where this is going to be agentically in 2 years. You have to sort of prove you can even be a basic bookmark manager before anybody's going to sort of trust you to like get in and use it and give feedback. And so I think there's always a lot of tension between what you're selling right now
mm,
versus where it's headed. And then also how you talk to investors. If you jump too far and say, hey, this is going to be better than Pinterest, better and bigger than Pinterest, especially in the first year, you're going to get a lot of like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Everybody wants to be, oh, we're building the next Facebook or whatever.
sure.
But somebody's got to,
Right.
you know.
Right.
And so, but in the first year, it's always the most difficult, sort of that tension between where you know it's going to end up and what you're building right now that people have to be able to use right now that might not be able to deliver on all the future promises. So that tension, I think, is one of the harder ones.
Yeah. Well, you've already made such incredible strides in year one. I think the last time we talked, there are 18,000 users on Stacklist. You have over 100 paid business accounts on Stacklist. Um, so when you look at some of the people that have shown up, whether they are bought into this future idea of, someday Pinterest, or you and I have talked before also about bookmarking and like saving sort of articles, or Linktree, or some notions like that. Um,
Hmm.
who who do you actually want more of at Stacklist? Like, how are you thinking about that customer equation, some of that matchup?
I think that the people that right now their poor bookmarks are trapped inside Instagram. It's the
Yeah.
people who
The link and
um,
comment people.
link and comment, but also, you end up seeing something interesting and you hit bookmark, and
Yeah.
but you also are a little sad inside because you're probably not going to come back to that. You're probably not going to go browse through your Instagram bookmarks.
Oh, right. The
it's a
bookmarks.
very
Yeah.
shallow feature that doesn't allow you really to you can't mix and match the stuff that's in there
Yeah.
or share those publicly. Like it's not as easy. And so you think about Instagram and LinkedIn and all of these networks where they have a heart or a save or whatever, but
Yeah.
really that's it's just a surface level thing that sets that thing aside, but you can't
Sure.
really sort of organize, shuffle, share. I can't just take my food Instagram bookmarks and send you a link and say, go enjoy.
Sure.
Um, and so I think that the things that we find that we want to curate in our lives, and the curation portion, I think, is really important right now because obviously in AI slop and the glut of content that we have these days, which is, yes, I can write an agent that will write me 500 blogs to try and fill up the internet with my stuff to try and
Sure.
hack SEO. That does it's not really useful,
Yeah.
and it's really the human taste and the human curation that sort of sets us apart. When I ask you, what's a great X to do Y, you've
Yeah.
probably spent a lot of time and effort like looking at all the tangibles and intangibles about stuff. And so when you give me something, there's a lot of signal and a lot of value in that.
Yeah.
And so, that's what I think our focus is the people who love to sort of curate their lives and save things to try or save things that are their
Mm,
favorite, and then to be able to sort of resurface those or to give signal for other things that they might like,
yeah.
um, is who I think about, which is not really an ICP that is like, I want bookmarking people. I want, book talk people. It's more just
Right.
sort of the people who enjoy um, saving and sharing socially,
Yeah.
and to make that process easier.
Yeah. That makes sense. So, Kyle, is there a customer type that has shown up for Stacklist that you didn't necessarily expect?
Um, I think the business portion, some of the happy accidents that we've had are, I think we've widened ourselves into another set of values that can really help businesses because of the evolution of SEO to GEO.
Hmm.
Um, I knew, early on, when you think about the customers that really have stood out the most on the platform for current customers is, moms as the COO of the house that sort of
Mm,
organizes and saves and shares. Also, book talk is a great example of being able, or movie movie entertainment. The people who love using Letterboxd and that
yeah.
look at the trivia on IMDb, just being able to share that stuff. But I think also what we've come into is we're in this era now that the current infrastructure is not really built for AI, right? The static
Mm,
brochure website plus Instagram and maybe LinkedIn articles, like that's a hard, it's just kind of all of your stuff lives in these different buckets, and some are walled and gated and some are not.
yeah,
Um, and so being able to also use the infrastructure that we've built to be able to have people put everything in there and then
yeah,
essentially have multiple surfaces by which to share and track attribution through data has been really interesting.
yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting point that you're making around that type of someone who saves a lot on different platforms, whether, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, or Meta, whatever it is. And that's not necessarily a very specific kind of person. However, I do think that attributing broadly to this idea of helping people find things or forgetful people, like it's too broad a bucket, even if that's something that is an appropriate use case. So I do think there's something specifically around, as you said, getting narrow, even if nothing else, to test a hypothesis or try something out.
Yeah, and I think we've gotten. I think our narrowness right now. Our focus is real estate, and I think it's real estate is a great
Mm,
example of one of the industries, one of the sectors that generally has a hard time marketing in general
yeah,
because a couple things. One, your audience is only really relevant to you, or your content is only really relevant to them maybe 5% of the time, because like
sure,
I'm not planning on buying or selling right now,
sure,
so there's almost
sure,
zero real estate content that would interest me at this moment.
sure.
um, and then you think about the old tools that from a real estate perspective, which is you got traditional billboards and radio ads, but also like your website, which is generally going to be probably an older WordPress website that only has featured listings on it. And you might do a
Sure.
blog, but the blog is sort of like, hey, we're sponsoring this local school to do this thing. It's really sort of these little kind of updates, but that's not something that I would go to the website and like check
Yeah.
on all the time.
Yeah.
Then a newsletter that probably wouldn't even interest me if I was actually buying, because I'm just
Yep.
specifically focused on what I want, not sort of the macro, what's happening in the area.
Yep.
And then Instagram. And Instagram typically ends up being either some timely videos. This is me going, hey, I'm standing outside a house. This open house is open today. But that thing
Sure.
becomes stale in about 24 hours.
That's right.
Um,
Yep.
and that's kind of the surface area. Like,
Yeah.
other than that, and so what we're helping real estate agents do and agencies is realize that what you can do is take all of your local knowledge. So that is
Yep.
if you're researching the best schools, the best contractors, who's the best person to pressure wash a driveway, who's the best
Yeah.
interior designers, where's the best coffee shops, indoor playgrounds for kids. This is all stuff that is essentially trapped in the minds of these local experts. And the communication of that is usually, oh, I'll text you or I'll email that info to you. But that's actually a surface area that you could
Sure.
retain a relationship through.
Yeah.
But that normally would mean the agent would have to go build some sort of system on their website, or build a community and then maintain a community. So what we're doing is essentially taking that and giving in this open content network is the ability to have a surface that shows all of that
Yeah.
their customers and prospects can end up using, sharing, saving, and they didn't have to build anything. It's as easy as using Gmail.
Yep.
Um, but the cool other happy accident is now that SEO is being replaced by GEO,
Right.
and it's really about answer engines. So it's me going like, hey, where's the best indoor kids playgrounds in Roswell, Georgia? That's not listing 10 blue links. It's just going to give me an answer.
That's right.
um, and what you do is, now that you've put all that local expertise in the surface area that is now indexable and findable and servable by
Yeah.
AI, and not sort of on the eighth level deep of your website or buried inside the video content of your Instagram, it can actually serve that up and go, oh, there's actually this real estate agent who just made a 15 best indoor playgrounds in Atlanta. I'll
Yep.
serve that stack up to you. And so
Yep.
I end up getting real estate content, but it's actually useful and I can just save it. And now I've sort of made a connection, with that business or that business person that normally wouldn't have happened.
Yeah. So we've got a few people who are on the live stream now. And I just wanted to make sure that, while, you know, Kyle and I have a little bit of a framework for the way that we're talking about our topic today. However, if folks have questions that they want to drop into the chat, I do have it open over here on my phone. So happy to bring comments in or other points that someone might want to make as they're listening. Kyle, the point that you're making around SEO being search engine optimization and GEO, that's generated engine optimization, right? Like AI engines.
Generative engine, yeah. So a generative engine being, like a ChatGPT or a Claude or an engine inside of an app that would give
Yep,
recommendations. So SEO, you think the DuckDuckGos and the MSNs and the Yahoos and and the Googles of that era.
sure,
Even Google is sort of replacing its 10 blue links with a generative engine saying, "Hey, I found the answer for you."
sure.
And so that's that shift.
Yeah. So in working on Stacklist, I wonder because the lens of our conversation is meant to be around how you think about finding your customer, and ultimately, as every business hopes for, is this notion of product market fit. So,
Mhm.
Kyle, is there some customer type at Stacklist um, that that you were really listening to or paying attention for, and that customer may have said something, or maybe you uncovered something in the research that they wanted something to be built, and then some effort where you realize that later that that's not actually the thing that was needed or asked for, much in the same way that you talked about watching at Fjord when we would have clients come in and they would say, oh, we need a dashboard, or oh, we need such and such. And there would be a little bit of rigor put around, like, here's the thing we think we hear you asking for. Why do you need
Mhm.
that? So what? Blah, 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 all of those core questions. Is there something like that that's happened at Stacklist where you've made something and you thought, I don't think this is the thing?
Yeah, I think in the first year we actually and what was great is for most of that time we were actually self-funded, and so you
Mm,
can you can spend more time sort of exploring when you don't have as much pressure.
sure.
But
The
I actually
stakes are
like
different.
yeah, but I actually like that exploration stage where it is this unformed mold that you are, it's the I can't remember who said it, but it's like looking at the block of marble, right? And it's
Mm,
really just
hmm.
sort of like, okay, there is a shape inside of there, and I'm trying to get to it.
Sure.
And I think you do some exploration, but you do have clients that would come to us and be like, oh, I need X or Y, and that's because that's what their current setup does right now, and sort of you want
Mm,
to fit this square peg into this square hole.
sure.
Whereas that might not be the thing, or it might be depreciated in 3 months. A
Sure.
good example is even like building some of the APIs and building some of the tooling that would connect to current sort of systems. And then of course MCP comes out. We build the Stackless MCP, and now you can actually hook it up to your own personal Claude and be like, hey, go find all
Sure.
this stuff that's in my Stacklist account, or go put stuff in my Stacklist account. And so like
Sure.
there are things I think we played with and started to look at, but made the right call to sort of back up. And also, as we saw the evolution, especially of AI, is sort of wait for the right time until some of these tools unlocked to unleash those
Mm,
pieces,
mm.
versus trying to build it all from by hand. So
Yeah.
I think the from a
Are you
customer
seeing a lot of
perspective,
usage? Are you seeing a lot of usage on the MCP side of Stacklist?
Yeah, more and more. I think now that we
Okay.
also it's people are understanding, it's MCP more of a dev term, but also just the connector, right? It really
Yeah.
is just a connector into other systems. And because of the MCP, we also built our own agent, Stacky, inside
Mm.
Stacklist.
Hmm. Hmm.
That's getting the most usage because you can actually, I use Whisperflow, so I dictate to all my things. But I love just going into Stacklist and being, I'll start dictating and going like, hey, can you find me the best X of Y? And just go put that
Mm.
into a stack in my stack list. And you can watch it search the web, sort of do its analysis and then take all the cards and then put them into a stack. And then like that whole
Yeah.
thing is sort of ready. Which is really fun that kind of opened up because what that does is that solves also onboarding. So we could have built a
Yeah.
really complex onboarding screen by screen, pixel by pixel. Now
Sure.
you can actually tell Stacky, like just point it at your socials or
Yep.
your website, and it'll go
Yep.
get all that content and put it in
Yep.
there for you. And so
Yep.
instead of building the complex machine that had to be maintained, now we have the simple interface that happens to be complex underneath that goes
Yeah.
and does all that
Yeah.
instead.
Yeah. As someone who's used Stacky, I think when we had a catch up call maybe a year ago, while we were talking about what I was working on for howthisworks.co, you actually just took one of the links off of my homepage and you started a stack right there while we were on the call. So it was really easy to do. And it's even easier now. I've gone in and added to that initial card that you made and built out a few more things for my own business. So I can attest to that it's really easy to do. And I think it's been helpful to have another place where people can find out more information about what it is that I do.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. And also, hopefully, I would love to. It's a funny phrase, but I would love to eat the website. The
Sure.
website is one of those things that has been, we've been doing HTML and CSS and having these sort of big designed buildings, for
Yeah.
lack of it, but which are really kind of brochures to who we are, but take a lot of time and effort and development and design and then you kind of don't touch it, and so
Yep.
then you have to pivot to going to a platform like Instagram to try and
Sure.
tell people what you're up to.
Sure.
Is to essentially have a stack list hub be
Yeah.
kind of like the content graph for a person or a company and have it sort of auto updating it. We're working on having it that it would go get your recent posts from X or Instagram, pull those in automatically if you blogged on Substack. And so this becomes that sort of living surface in which people can follow and that you own more than your Instagram videos.
Yeah.
Um, and um, and then does that become the evolution of the website, which becomes less. You don't have to
Yeah.
build these sort of static pages. It can be an infinite amount of surfaces that share all sorts of contextual content.
Yeah. Well, I wonder, we kind of started talking about it with GEO, but we've filled the bingo card for any conversation today and said, AI, artificial intelligence. But I wonder how you're thinking about the way things are made at Stacklist using AI. And
Mm.
I spoiler alert, I already know that Kyle thinks about this an awful lot, having talked to him and watched other things that he's done. But how are you thinking about and how do you specifically leverage AI to make things at Stacklist?
Yeah, I think I think it was February 4th or February 6th. I can't remember what that date was, but the day that Claude Opus uh, 4.6 came out was just
Hmm.
this. It was this transformational shift, and you can feel it. And that's when SaaSpocalypse happened and all that. And
Right.
primarily because you didn't have to prompt it anymore with this very, very specific sort of rigor to
Sure.
ask it what it wanted to do. You
Sure.
could be like, hey, can you go make me a website and make it look like this website and but like
Right.
put my face on it? And it would go,
Right.
sure. And then it would go do it. Well, now it
Yep.
was just infinite. So I think since then, Martina and I have spent so much time in systems like Claude Code. I
Yeah.
think In a weekend, I rewrote all three of our sites and got them off a framer and launched them. And this is like
Hmm.
while I'm having coffee. And
Right.
then, and then also another weekend, I actually have there's a great company that we've partnered with, Graft, where what you can do is they have up to 700 data sources. So I can
Hmm.
take now my bank and my credit card and all of our Stripe financial data, all of our like I can put everything in there, and then I tell Claude Code, make me essentially the Tony Stark dashboard, right? Where it's like,
Hmm.
wake up, Jarvis.
Hmm.
Where it's like it shows me everything about the business in terms of burn and spend. And this was Saturday morning, like over a coffee.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden I have this fully rich, like live streaming data.
Yeah.
Um, and that wouldn't have been possible before. You would have had a team working on that for quite a long time. And so it's also sped us up and sped our teams up in being able to sort of open up the possibilities that you don't have to have big engineering teams to do it. You can actually just have a handful of people that are good at this going 10 times faster, because they're
Yeah.
not actually looking at individual pieces of code. They're really just strategically looking at the big chunks that were done, in the
Yeah.
process. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think everybody on the team ends up using Claude, and probably half our team uses Claude Code every day, to end up speeding up that work. And while I am technical-ish and I can sit and talk technical, I'm
Yeah.
not an
Yeah.
engineer. But I've built probably 7 of these agents plus a personal agent for myself that ties into all my like Slack, Gmail, calendar, my granola notes, like every
Sure.
surface that is basically input coming at me
Yeah.
goes into the agent. And then the agent sort of goes, all right, here's the deal. Here's how we're
Yeah.
going to triage your day.
Yep.
And that stuff makes you, just so much faster and able to sort of cut through a lot of the noise and just work on the signal.
Yeah. But it sounds like that one of the things that I hear you saying, Kyle, and actually I want to add to that for a minute. Probably one of the best AI tips that I've heard is from a designer that I worked with previously. And, it's not about following somebody else's system, but it's really about looking at what's happening in your own day, your own work day, maybe even your own personal day. And is there a spot, is there a spot that feels really gnarly or painful or like something that you have to do on a very regular basis that either isn't quite being done at the quality that you want it to be done, or maybe not as fast as you need it to be done and you want some sort of boost to it. And that's actually one of the best places to apply something like AI to, because you understand that situation so deeply, so you can apply your context, your expertise, all the things that you've done before, and then build a solution that is somehow better, whether it means you're spending a little less time on it, or maybe it's preloading some information that you would have to sit and go find, some way to make it just a little bit faster, a little bit better, a little bit different than it is today.
Yeah, I think that is what we're seeing is that, now it's a trap. Obviously, it can be a trap, I think, especially for founders, Martina and myself. Martina's more in the making because she's as the CTO, and
Mm,
running engineering. But for me, it's also a trap that I have to watch out for, which is now I see infinite possibilities of things that could
uh,
be sped up.
yeah, sure,
Right, but I can't be sort of sitting here trying to optimize every process through
yeah,
building an agent or a workflow. Otherwise,
sure,
I'm 90% maker, and not out there sort of doing sales and marketing and partnerships and the other things. I'm
sure,
just sort of solving stuff internally. So I have to sort of watch that balance.
yeah,
Um, but now it is faster. You're right in terms of we see a good example is, when our team is sort of, we have a concierge team that builds all of the content hubs for our clients. And
mm,
when it's ready, you can send it to one of our other sort of team members to look at it for QA. But we're actually building a
sure,
process that the agent can actually go through there and it's like, does this map to what the standards of a content hub for this brand, are? And so being able to build something that can also go through that also makes it faster for the review process or even the
Yeah.
building process. We try and find those balances in the places where we can make things much more efficient, to sort
Yeah.
of remove the how many hands touch this before it goes out the door.
Yeah.
But you do have to watch it because it's fun. But then you'll also be sitting here, 6 coffees deep, being like, okay, I still got to make more stuff. Um,
Yeah,
so
the dopamine hit off of that is pretty strong, right? Once you
yeah,
kind of start going down that path, if you're not asking those contextual questions in the beginning, why are we making this? So what? And then some of the things that we talked about previously, which is, distinguishing between, what's someone asking for something, and even if that someone is yourself who's asking for something, right? Like, oh, this would be a cool idea, and following that thread versus this is signal that we are seeing either another customer has said this to us, but framing up what that foundational material is for how do we know what to build.
yeah. I think that signal. I think a lot of it comes through when we're also on sales calls and sort
Mm,
of
hmm.
pre onboarding,
Hmm.
um, and the biggest one these days is, especially on sales calls, when I talk to marketing managers,
Hmm.
CMOs,
Hmm.
heads of marketing, they're like, "Oh, I just got off the phone with my team, and we're all trying to figure out how do we show up in ChatGPT."
Mm.
You hear a lot more of that,
Yeah.
and that ends up sort of driving that signal. And so
Yep.
one of the current things we're working on is we've had it before where clients end up building a branded hub. We had a funeral home in New York, New Jersey that essentially kind of takes care of the process of cremation for you without a funeral
Mm.
home, and so you can just do
Mm.
an order through them. They take care of everything. They spent a lot of time on SEO and trying to get their website like the most SEO'd as possible. We
Sure.
launched a hub, and one of the things that we did in launching the hub was just took all of their uh, Google reviews, Trustpilot reviews, G2 reviews, and essentially kind of hydrated them back up to the top because now they're on this hub. So
Oh,
you think
yeah.
about AI is not going to go into each of those systems and probably
Wow.
can't to try
Right.
and get that stuff out to then attribute it to the company. But now
Yep.
what we're doing is sort of creating these bookmarks up top with context saying, here's all of these reviews.
Yeah.
The Google review stat got served up the day to a ChatGPT user, and we saw this in the analytics, and became the answer or the citation of whatever the query was, best cremation service in New York, New Jersey, or whatever. And then
Sure.
the next day, they ended up getting a $3,000 order,
Wow.
and
Yeah.
we had another client that launched her hub, and it's great, so much good resources on it, and the sheer amount of useful content on it, immediately it got picked up and starting being cited by ChatGPT within
Wow.
about 2 days.
Yeah.
What we're trying to do is because we've heard all these from CMOs, and we're trying to solve, how do we show up in ChatGPT? And you've got a lot of SEO companies going, write more blogs and
Yep.
do some YouTube shorts, like basically become a company that you aren't, just to
Yep.
try and get more eyeballs.
Yep.
And what we're trying to solve is, no, just take everything that is in the ecosystem of your
That you've already
brand or your
done.
company,
Yeah.
put it into one place as the front door, and make it traversable.
Yep.
Um, and by doing that, what we're trying to do is not just have the indexing and the user citations happen over time, but to
Yeah.
really like boost and jump, that gets out there faster and travels further faster without the company needing to do anything. And so that's what we're
Yeah.
kind of solving right now.
Yeah. That's interesting. One of the questions that we had meant to talk about was some area in which you're pushing with Stacklist, something you don't fully know yet. And although it sounds like, based on some hypotheses that you had around SEO, GEO, and some of those, and you're right. Like some of the advice around that area is, well, sort of do this optimization work today, continue to do this, write blogs, make short videos, do this laundry list of things that may not be in your immediate either interest or things that you're good at, but go ahead and do them anyway. But what I hear you saying is, there are things that are part and parcel to running a business, especially if you're listed on, Google Maps. And so you end up getting reviews and, all of these things. So why not take some of the operational things that you're already doing as a business, and how can we build that trust signal for you inside of your hub?
Yeah, and have a single place that doesn't require development. And
Right.
also, all of your content does not need to be created. You don't need
Right.
to
Right.
sit down and write 50 articles or
Right.
shoot 50 videos and edit them and then try and also watch YouTube videos on how best to publish your videos so that they get
Yeah.
picked up by the signal. You
Yeah.
also can just essentially aggregate, and this can include other people's content too, but
Yeah.
aggregate the best stuff in and around your field. Also, we've seen, even companies having stacks in their profile that are like, here's the Spotify playlist that our team jams out to,
Sure.
and other things like that that make a company more human, but also interesting and
Yeah.
relevant to more people rather than just like, here's the branded content I've got to sell you my thing. It's
Yeah.
sort of like everything in that ecosystem. What tools our team use, what AI tools our team is researching right now, what we love, what we can't live without. All that becomes interesting content in a community sharing sort of way versus just in a kind of sales marketing way. But
Yeah.
it still increases your kind of sphere of influence when you think about being discovered.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Really filling in the edges of what this looks like. I sometimes use this analogy of folks who think of um, their business a bit like a lemonade stand. And so if someone's coming to like buy a cup of lemonade from you, that's great. However, what happens when that's not the only thing that they want, right? They need other things, or they need some of the, I mean, if you're setting up in front of your house, your neighbors probably know you, and but you're probably also not selling a ton of lemonade. So I think there are some parts to that which are around how to then um, like not only have the lemonade stand that you're running today, but then your neighbors to understand, or people who come and find you to understand that you've been doing this for years, right? You do this every other Thursday. You will do not only
Right.
lemonade, but sometimes you'll have cookies and gluten
And
free on
there's
request.
a whole guide about how to set up and run your own lemonade stand,
That's right. That's
and
right.
it's also the social videos or the interview that you got interviewed on why you run your lemonades. Like it's
Yep.
essentially now not just sort of, does it taste good? Do you want
Yep.
one right now? Are you
Yep.
thirsty?
Yep.
It's
Yep.
also kind of everything around that. I think when
Yeah.
we do that, you kind of have more potential inflection points in which someone's going to run into your brand and or share it,
Yeah.
which then becomes sort of, and these things compound. How well is your 184th TikTok doing, sort of buried at the bottom of the pile
Yeah.
versus, and how well's that blog, that you
Yeah.
wrote, 2 years ago versus
Yeah.
these sort of stacks that can compound and get shared over time as they
Yep.
get signal and people interact with them and they share them. And so it just kind of keeps going. And so that's where we're really drilling in on this idea of an open content network. It's kind of like you think about WordPress
Hmm.
in the 2000s kind of ate the internet. I don't know what the crazy stat was, but it was like 82% of all websites run on WordPress or something
Yeah.
like that. And all they
Yep.
really did is create a publishing platform that made it really easy for someone to kind of, not
Yeah.
point click, but it was you didn't have to build something from scratch. You essentially had to
Yep.
install something,
Yep.
do a little bit of configuration, and now you could just infinitely blog to your heart's content. And so that had this proliferation of content that went out there
Hmm.
because now it was so easy to publish in the same sort of way.
Yeah.
You now have a place that is incredibly easy to spin up and sort of aggregate everything about your brand and have that go out versus you trying to build that functionality,
Yeah.
on a website or whatever. And
Yep.
so that's kind of where I see us, is in that like WordPress 2.0 kind of place where it's being able to build this curated sort of layer of the internet, which is when I go to Amazon, we've even seen it now. You go to Amazon, go search for like best phone case, and you see, you got Tim Do and Reese Dot and like all these companies that are clones of
Hmm.
clones of clones of clones of
Hmm.
clones.
Hmm.
How do you cut through that and just like I could search your stack list or
Yeah.
10 other friends stack lists and sort of see the cases or the phone accessories that people are really like, I'm telling you, this is my favorite. Kind of cut through that noise.
Yeah.
Um, and that anyone, even the guy down the street that is incredibly obsessed with lawn equipment could
Sure.
end up sort of putting that stuff on there, and when people ask, could even have it as affiliate links, and sort
Yeah.
of make recommendations, and doesn't need to learn to be a developer or build his own website and try and market it or whatever, can really
Yep.
just sort of like simply aggregate and share.
Yeah. Yeah. That totally makes sense. So, Kyle, is there a customer assumption that you're either working on at Stacklist or you're considering that you don't fully know yet?
um I think considering uh I think considering is one of those that I've been thinking a lot about internal inside companies.
Mm,
Um, one of the things that we've seen it work well now that let's say even a real estate agency, once we have a hub that has all these things in it, well, now you
sure.
kind of have this place where all that stuff is aggregated. And in
Yeah.
a second, you can search and find that stuff. And so it becomes kind of a lightweight content management internally that's
Sure.
not as heavy as uh, SharePoint or, as not as sort of just
A big
plain
Notion
utility as
document
Google
or
Drive or
yeah.
Dropbox, but
Yeah.
really can be PDFs. Actually, I run all of my knowledge, I mean like markdown files into Stacklist because now
Mm,
um, my sort of personal agent, as we're working on stuff, it takes a daily markdown card for me,
mm,
the projects I'm working on, the things I need to do, the people I need to follow up with, and puts them into markdown cards into Stacklist. So that becomes my knowledge
mm,
repository. So
mm,
thinking about internal company knowledge, also just in terms of markdown, PDF, video, links to things, partners, that also makes it easy for any company to be able to be like, oh, sure, it was so great meeting with you. Let me follow up with a few resources after this. And I go boom, 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 and I go add to stack and I go, hey, Tom, it was so nice meeting you. Let me know if you have any
yeah.
questions. Here's all the stuff we talked about. And I fire
Yeah.
that out. Becomes now that sort of CMS to sharing. And
Mm,
so thinking a lot about also larger teams and the ability to sort of have a simple and easy CMS layer of kind of everything that we've got, inside the company, to make it an easy way to collaborate on that stuff too.
yeah. That makes sense. A way to make it flexible, but then also to accommodate a bit like the jar is the shape of the thing you want to put into it, or it's flexible in a way, extensible, so that way it's not limited to only that thing.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's where, it's typically Box and Dropbox are great, but also like
Sure.
you can put links in there, but like
Sure.
it's a little clunky. So then you need to make a document that's got links in it.
Yeah.
And then you just share flat sort of documents. Whereas this is one that I can have a link to say a partner that we partner with have notes in it. But that
Yep.
one card as sort of an atomic object can live in 10 different stacks that are
Sure.
contextually relevant. Some are
Sure.
exposed externally and some are just internal.
Yeah.
This isn't just a link in a document. And then if I want to reference that again, I have a different link or I have another link in a different document. And I keep repeating that process. So,
Yep.
so interesting to be able to also have, internal, external links, PDFs, videos. We can host videos, markdown files, PDFs, and image galleries now. And so being able to just have that stuff in a place that is easy for team members to get in and find is so that's what I'd love to figure out also is sort of the knowledge repository internally
Right.
that makes it easy to recall, group, and share all that stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, Kyle, is there something that we haven't talked about yet, that you really think that we're missing or you think that we should talk about?
Um, No, I think we're just in that era. When I think about building things, I think it's still critical to talk to customers and to get feedback about what the current pain is. But I
Mm,
think, more and more, I've been using historical research to try and predict where we may go. And so I'll run like a 9 model search about, like, show me the points, kind of like WordPress, in which there were inflection points, right? When phones came out, when websites came out, when WordPress came out, when phones came out, when Squarespace came out. Like, there's these moments in which this sort of how content gets distributed and surfaced, and how you discover and search.
sure.
And so I sort of been doing research on that to end up sort of informing some of the decisions that we make that are future facing versus, and some I do get customer input on that, but I think it's also hard sometimes for customers to give you the answer that they haven't experienced yet or didn't know was sort of possible. Even with Stacklist, when I show, like, somebody on a call will be like, "Oh, you're from Atlanta. I've always wanted to go there. I've heard the food's good." And
Sure.
at about 2 seconds, I end up sending the Atlanta stack in a chat, and
Sure.
they're like, "Wait, did you just have that on hand?" I'm like,
Right.
"Yeah." And it's
Yeah.
like, because you're not used to that, you probably wouldn't have said, "I wish I could do that thing right now." And so, I think that's where we're in that kind of balance. But that we try and use AI to do research of potentially how historical changes made to end up trying to give us a little bit of that future facing, as well as the current pains, and marry those together.
Do you couple that with any sort of discovery interviews of either current customers or past customers as a way of determining? And I agree with you. It's hard to gauge future or even what it is that someone might ascribe to later. But just going back, because there is that idea in user research that past actions and decisions that have been made are better indicators of future behavior
Mm.
versus that sort of aspirational, like, what do you want or what do you like or what do you not like? Like, those are very subjective questions.
Hmm.
Whereas if you really dig into someone's sort of context and their worldview, then you'll learn a lot more. Of course, it's right, right.
All good.
It's all good.
Um, yeah, no, I agree. I think it's one of those that I think what we try and also pull out is maybe the customer doesn't have the right answer for it, but you watch those actions, kind of like you said, where it's like, well, where do you save that stuff now? Well,
Sure.
I have a Mac note that is just kind of this
Sure.
endlessly running note. So
Yep.
you are saving those things somewhere, but you also, it sounds like you don't have the right bucket or the right surface to be able to put that into.
Right.
If you had, and sort of doing a little bit of that, how do you do it now? Plus also, how would you do it, or how could you do it?
Yep.
Does help, and I love doing those. We've also sort of changed so fast that, like, we're trying to get to a place in the next month where this next big sort of iteration of what Stacklist is and what it can do, that we kind of lock that and then go back to doing those interviews
Yeah.
here soon with the people that are interacting in this new model,
Yeah.
um, and get some of that
I,
data and that feedback. But I do love those. I love those, and I love hearing people's thoughts about that, and also just like those moments when you hear these little ideas or sparks or something that you can see would make a big difference in how you approach the product.
well, I feel like even just adding just a small amount of that, Teresa Torres, among other folks, recommends just doing one customer interview a week. So even if you're doing one, and you can speed that up, you can add more, but one customer interview where you're asking them these kinds of, how have you solved this problem in the past? What are your workarounds? How do you think about this? Because sometimes the answer is like, this isn't a big enough problem for me to do anything with, right? It's annoying, but I don't want to do anything. So that's also a signal. So anyway, we won't go down this path because we're just about ready to wrap up our live stream. But Kyle, I wanted to say thank you so much for making time and space to talk to me today. I hope that folks who are listening to this, either now or after the fact, are getting some good information. Kyle, where can people find out more information about you?
Yeah, it is so stacklist.app. /Kyle. That's me. That's my
Nice.
profile. And so you can sort of, we've got anybody, feel free to use my meeting link that's on there, set some time, brainstorm, talk through, how this might be able to be, applicable to you or your business. And then also you can see all my sort of favorite curations there as well.
Nice. Well, I'm Skipper Chung Warson. If you don't know who I am, I run a services practice called How This Works Co. And you can find me here on LinkedIn or on YouTube on this channel, or you can just go to howthisworks.co to find out more information about what we do. Thanks so much, everyone. Appreciate your time today. Thanks again, Kyle.
Thank you.